trying to get some work done in here. Damn it, man, don't I pay you enough? Jesus Christ. Hello, how are you? I'm Bentley Kyle Evans, and you're watching Bentertainment, Bentley Entertainment. See what I did with that? Anyway, if you don't like, subscribe, or tell a friend, share, any of that good stuff, I won't tell you a damn thing. Welcome back, and here we are in my office, and I'm gonna talk to you about a few things that a lot of different people ask me, but you gotta admit that was a pretty dope intro, right? Pretty dope intro? Anyway, you know, a lot of people ask me on a daily, you know, when coming up with characters, how do you develop your characters in a sitcom or a movie or a stage play, any of those things? How do I come up with my characters? And so to me, to answer that, art imitates life. So for instance, what I mean by that is I usually base characters on people that I have come in contact with or that I've heard about through a third party. For instance, I'll give you a quick, the Jamie Foxx show, for instance. Okay, so let's talk about the Jamie Foxx show, which was a creation of mine, co-created by Jamie Foxx. And when we came up with that show, Jamie had the great idea to do a show about a guy who's relocating from Texas and coming to LA, where his aunt and uncle own a mom and pop type of hotel, boutique hotel. And so, you know, one of the things that you have to do once you have the scenario, now you have to focus on who are these characters that are going to breathe life into this series. In this particular instance, when we came up with the Jamie Foxx show, The King's Tower, we had to populate it with the aunt and uncle characters first. So my dear aunt, my mother's sister, who was one of my absolute favorite people on the planet, her name was Helen Kilgore. And so when coming up with a aunt character, I leaned heavily on that, and I came up with Aunt Helen. So that was based upon my aunt. And the character, Elliot English, happened to resemble my aunt a lot. And I love the fact that I got a chance to introduce my aunt to her. So that's my own personal thing. And so Elliot English played Aunt Helen. When you're thinking of this nurturing individual that has to nurture Jamie's character, because again, he's a bit of a country guy who's coming to LA to recreate himself and fit into a space that he's not used to. So you needed that nurturing character. And my aunt was the nurturing character that every time I went to Oakland, California, where I was born, and I would go back to Oakland and visit my aunt, you know, she wouldn't let me eat in restaurants. She had to make sure that there was a home cooked meal, all that kind of stuff, because that was just her, you know, her type. And she was a nurse by trade. So I took a lot of the characteristics of that Aunt Helen character and made her, and put that into the character Elliot English was playing Aunt Helen on the show. And so I felt like this is going to be the matriarch of the family, and she's going to play a very, very important role here. So she has to have a strong mother-like presence. And that was, you know, that was the mindset in coming up with that character, Aunt Helen. Now, that was the Aunt Helen character. But opposed to that, we had the Uncle Junior character that was played by Garrett Morris. Now, Garrett, I was very familiar with Garrett's work from Saturday Night Live, from movies that I loved growing up, like Cooley High. There was a lot of movies that Garrett played really fun roles in. And so I had a lot of respect for him. And I actually got the opportunity to work with him first on Martin, where I was a producer, but we'll talk more about that later. But in the meantime, when coming up with a character, Uncle Junior, even before I met, I knew him already, but even before I casted Garrett Morris in the role of Uncle Junior, I had written the role based on a gentleman that I knew his name was Uncle Junior. Now his he was Uncle Junior to everybody in the family because he was one of my good friend's father. My friend Monique, she had a father. I just knew him as Junior Deku, and so the kids in the neighborhood and all of her friends, we could come over to Monique's house, and it was kind of like one of those households where you felt like you were an adult because the parents kind of let you take a sip of beer, or they would, let you have a little bit of, what was it that we used to drink? Licorice schnapps and stuff like that. So he was a character. He was a guy who he was responsible, but he also felt like, oh, that ain't gonna hurt them kids. Let them have a little beer. They want a little beer. Just as long as they stay in the house and stay in the backyard, they're all right with me. And so Uncle Junior was a guy that we just came, we really just came to love. And I had my first experience eating hog head cheese because Uncle Junior put some hog head cheese on a cracker and said, "Here, boy, try that." And I was like, hog head cheese? What is it? He says, "Hog head, boy. Put it on the cracker and eat it." So I ate it. Wasn't half bad. I probably will not eat it again, but it wasn't half bad. But based upon the relationship that I had with him and how he treated all the kids in the area and how he was a very revered guy in his household, I was able to take those characteristics and actually name the character Uncle Junior and take some of Mr. Deku's characteristics and put them right in there where Garrett could really find the character. And of course, I talked to Garrett and Elia and all the other characters about the inspiration for the characters. So it was kind of easy for them to breathe life into those characters. So that's the Uncle Junior character. It came down to Garrett Morris and Johnny Brown for that role. Those of you who do not know who Johnny Brown is, Johnny Brown, and I hope I'm saying his name right, but I think I am. Johnny Brown played Mr. Bookman on Good Times and everything. So he's a legend in the black households in the community. Bookman, he just recently passed, so God bless him and everything. But it came down to those two guys for the role of Uncle Junior, and I think Garrett just edged him out just a little bit. I mean, he's TV royalty, the first black man on Saturday Night Live. So that's how we came up with the Uncle Junior role. So you may ask yourself, what makes a character special? Or, what makes a character stand out? I think that when you're putting together characters, you have to find the flaws in the characters, because flaws are what make people interesting. I don't think that anyone's interested in watching a perfect person walk around and go through their day-to-day, whereas you do want to see a flawed individual, because then it reminds you a little bit more of yourself or somebody that you know. So I think that in creating the characters, you look for the flaws, you look for the redeeming qualities in them, you look for their ability to just pop off the page with, catchy dialogue, catchphrases, things like that. But sometimes it's about the look of an individual and not necessarily to be the most attractive. Sometimes you're looking for somebody who's less attractive, or you're looking for somebody who is a little heavier or a little thinner, or it just really depends on what you're trying to convey to your audience. But for me, the first thing I look at is flaws. There is no character that's interesting to me if they don't have any type of flaws, and they're always trying to correct those flaws. So in character development, my suggestion is always to look at a person for their flaws in order to make that character pop off the page. So the first time that I see a character in any scenario, I try to make some sort of special introduction, and usually it's going to be by someone coming in loud, someone coming in and making a statement. But realistically, it depends on the character, because you really want to set the tone for who he or she is, or them, he, she, them, whoever. You want to make sure that When they come in that room, they represent who they are the very first time you see them. So whether it's physically, like Kramer would do on Seinfeld, different situations. I mean, I've written characters that are very, very funny. I had these two guys on my Love That Girl series that would walk in the door, and their catchphrase every time they walked in, they would just go, "Hey." It was very, very, very funny just to see them come in. And you expected them to do that. Or Lenny and Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley. Anytime Squiggy came through the door, he would go, "Hello." That was just his thing. So you try to find different things that identify these characters, and you definitely want to showcase them the first time that you see them in any situation if you can. I won't say that that's the most important thing, because sometimes character development comes along and these characters kind of evolve in the writing. If you can have a well-defined character from the very beginning, it just makes for a easier writing session for the writers. Favorite character that I developed or created, it's so, wow, I've created so many different characters now in my 25 years of writing characters. It's kind of hard to say, but I tell you who's a fan favorite. There was a character that Martin Lawrence played on The Martin Show on Martin, and the character was named Jerome. And we shortened his name to Romy Rome, which was all Martin's doing and just his dialogue and everything. And the reason I liked the Romy Rome character was because the lady that wrote the character for the first time, she couldn't catch the voice, so she enlisted my help. And I came in her office and I sat down and said, no. If we're gonna do this character, Jerome, we gotta keep him authentic to the hood. And you know, of course, her first instinct was to say, well, we don't wanna make a hood character because, you know, this has to resonate with all the audiences. I said, nah, it starts in the Black community. If the Black people like it, everybody else will like it. And so creating that Romy Rome character, I took bits and pieces from different people that were in my life that I loved and respected their cadence and the way that they kind of did their thing. And my older brother, Mike Evans, Adrian Evans, but we called him Mike. Mike was a guy that was just clever. He had all the street colloquialisms. He just kind of knew how to say things that just make you laugh. Then I had also a friend named Kenneth Hammond. Ken is what we called him. And Ken was clever as well. And so Ken was the first person I heard say to me when I was about in the 8th grade. And I said to him, I said, so, you know, you're dropping out of school, what you gonna do? He said, come on, Ben, man, listen, man, I'm one of the original players from the Himalayas. I laughed so hard and I said, I have to use that somewhere. This is before I even thought about becoming a writer, but I knew that I had to use that somewhere. So then developing these characters, I started drawing back in my memory bank of the different sayings that different people came along with. And so I took that and I put that in Romy Rome's mouth for the first time, and Martin hit it right out of the box. It's almost like it was made for him. And all that came from my brother and different cats. My brother would say things like, I introduced him once to my wife's cousin, and he said, must be something in the water she's drinking, because she sure got a lot of junk in her trunk. Listen to me. I'm telling you, when you sit around and listen to these old cats that got these great sayings and these wonderful colloquialisms, you kind of take those little bits and pieces and you store them in your memory banks and you use them for when you really need to come up with some sort of clever dialogue. My brother used to always say, if you asked him a question, he would say, what was it he used to say? He would say, he said, don't ask me no questions. If I tell you a duck can pull a truck, then hook that motherfucker up. And I used to think that was so cool how he would come up with those things, and it was cool. So, you know, you take from your surroundings, you take from your personal experiences, you take from different family members you meet at the family reunions, because you know family reunions are always full of very colorful characters. And so, like I said, you write what you know in any situation. When you're putting these characters together, you draw from your own personal memory or something that you saw or a story that was told to you by someone else, but you just take all of those little bits and pieces and you put them in your memory banks to be used and tapped into later on. Hey, so check it out. I've taken up enough of your time, but I'm here all the time, every week, dropping jewels about just about anything that you could think of as it relates to Hollywood, entertainment, thus Bentertainment. Again, Bentley Entertainment, Bentertainment. I did that. It's very clever. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hey! Hey! Get out of it! Put that! Listen, I got to get out of here because I've got a very pressing situation outside where looks like somebody's probably breaking into my car, but I'll get back with you. I'll be here the same time next week. You make sure you stay tuned for Bentertainment. I'm Bentley Kyle Evans, and I'm out.